Oh hey there, you're looking for the Umbraco development section video? Yeah, this is the right spot, but first, let's pay some bills. Okay, today we're going to learn about the developer section in Umbraco. So this is another one of those sections, like the settings section, is pretty much going to be restricted only to developers or super trusted people. There's some bad stuff you can do in here in a production site. So just a quick reminder, you want to keep certain people out of here. So we're just going to go through the tree again. I'm going to skip a few things as we go here, and we'll come back to them, so no big deal there. So again, developer section, you've got a dashboard here. We'll actually start there. So there's a getting started promo here. Umbraco's got a thing called Umbraco TV if you want to look into some training from them officially. Examine management. So in here, this is a kind of a helpful way to get Examine to work. And in case you don't know what Examine is a tool by Shannon Deminick that works with a Lucene index that powers your search, kind of like the search box over here. So that search box up there is actually powered by the internal indexer, whereas if you wanted a search on your front end, that would be your external indexer. And we haven't talked about members yet, but if you want to index your members, you're going to be dealing with that over there. And if you open up one of these here, you've got different tools here. You can rebuild those indexes. You can figure out what's in these indexes in terms of number of documents. Lucene's its own thing. We're not even going to begin to get into Lucene very deep today. I just want you to be aware that this dashboard does exist. So in case you need to rebuild your index, you can do it through the GUI here. And then you got a little sample searcher here. So if we go to this guy here and we click search, and let's click about and hit search. We're going to get back some really strange looking data, but this is actually how your content is stored in the Lucene index. You've got different keys here that are black. This teal color here has got the actual data values here. And the about keyword here, this should have returned our about us page. And if we look for the node name, it's right there, about us, and it's got the node ID and things like that. So you can do that also for the searcher or the internal and the member. So that's as deep as we're going to go. This is very useful. Just want you to be aware of that. This is the Models Builder dashboard here. So Models Builder is a relatively new thing to Umbraco. And this is a really cool feature that will strongly type your content when you're trying to render it onto templates. Again, we're not going to get deep into this today, but just know that there is a dashboard here in the developer section, and you can regenerate those models. Lots of documentation available if you can find it. I'll put a link actually in the description. And then one cool feature of the more recent versions of Umbraco is this health check here. You've got different things here, and you can run checks, and you can run fixes. You can create your own custom health check and whatnot. So anyway, that's what the health checks are, and that's your dashboards. So if we look into the tree here, packages, let's go ahead and look into that one. So if we click on packages here, we can, well, first of all, we're greeted with a search here, and this actually will search community packages. Some are paid, but most of them are free. And if you click on one of these guys here, like T-Commerce, you can get a description, the author information, compatibility, things like that, screenshots. You can install the package right here. If you go to our Umbraco, which is the community site, you can actually just use this install local dialog here, and it's a zip file. However, please note that if you're an experienced developer and you're like, cool, it must use NuGet or something like that, you'll be disappointed because it's just a zip file and it's a proprietary format. However, the movement to NuGet has taken root over the last few years. And a lot of times you'll have a lot of these packages installed through NuGet, so you won't even visit this screen. One button here that we didn't look at is this right here, and this shows you what packages are installed. However, again, this only shows you packages that are installed through this this wizard here. So anything that you install through NuGet won't show up here. You can create your own packages, and to do so, you right-click and create, name your package. We're not going to go through the dialog here. Typically, if you're a super awesome developer and you're going to create your own package, you can go that route. However, you'll quickly learn that that is just not probably the best workflow for you. There's a bunch of tutorials out there on how to make your own NuGet package and Umbraco manifest and things like that. So that's available to you, and we're just going to leave it at that. We're going to skip grid editors and data types for right now, and we're going to jump to macros. So macros, in my opinion, are no longer kind of relevant. They're legacy in my mind. So if you were to click on a macro or create your own, you'd be greeting yourself here with a view. You can pass in some parameters, things of that nature. I would say, in my opinion, that this is no longer relevant, though some legacy code uses it. And what do you do with a macro? Well, you render things on a form, on a template, that is. Could be a form, could be anything. But that is what a macro is. You probably won't hang out here very much. Relationship types, or relation types. This is basically, as you move things around or do different operations on Umbraco, you might have basically some breadcrumbs or some sort of relationship between items. I don't use this much at all. Some people do. They swear by it. You can create your own relations here, and just know that there's a table and an API, I believe, that supports all this on the back end, and it's just something to be aware of. You may never actually use it. XSLT files here, what this is here is basically a screen echo of what is on your file system. So back in the day, XSLT was where it was at for rendering Umbraco stuff. Nowadays, this is basically just taking up space. And finally, we have partial view macro files, and this is like a razor macro type thingy. And again, I would just stay clear of this. I would just stick with views and partials if possible. If you feel you must use a macro, or if you use a package that uses a macro, you'll have to do some research on your own. So in summary, when you come to the developer section, you're going to hang out in either grid editors or data types. The rest is just kind of not relevant anymore. So let's start with grid editors. So what is a grid editor? A grid editor goes with the grid data type. So if we were to go to a document type here, and we're going to take the generic page, and we're going to add a grid item. So let's call this my grid. And if you aren't familiar with that, or with how to do this, you can either watch here and take notes, or you can read the settings, or not read, but watch the settings video. So anyway, let's see, is a grid even configured here? It is. Grid, my first grid, got it. We'll click OK, click Save. We'll move out here to a generic page, which, let's see, I bet you About Us is generic. And here's the grid right here. So what is a grid editor? Well, it's going to be a way to manifest different things to put here in the grid. So if we jump back to the developer section and look at Rich Text Editor here, oops, let me discard my changes. And here's where you can start configuring things for the grid editor. You're going to be able to create your own if you want, but also what's super useful is LibBlender, and it's a third-party package that it basically allows you to have your own custom grid editors without having to code anything. So what is necessary for a grid editor here is an alias icon. If we look through the different ones here, you can see how they're just a little bit different here. If we use LibBlender to create another one here, my grid thing, and we select LibBlender, LibBlender gives us a few more options here. We're not going to go ahead and go through this and save it here. And then what you'll do in just a second here, you'll configure these grid editors inside your grid data type. So you'll use this only in the context of grid. So if you're not using grid, you don't need to be hanging out here. So that takes us to what's probably going to be the majority of this video, which is data types. So mastering your data types is almost as important as mastering your document types. So what is a data type? Well, it's also called a property editor, but basically this is what's going to be input into your document types or your content. So these are your data inputs. So this one here handles color. Here's an archetype that's a page builder. Here's a checkbox list. We can, be like option 1, option 2, etc. Now we can drop this data type onto a document type. So the idea here is you're going to build data inputs, and then you're going to put these onto doc types. Now what's very important here is if you go to create here, you can create your own instance of a data type. So for instance, if we wanted to create a different kind of checkbox list, maybe we check one here. I usually prefix them all with what they are. So CBL is for checkbox list, and we'll call this my list. And maybe we add different things like favorite colors or whatever. So blue, red, and we hit save. Over here on the right, it'll create my checkbox list with the blue and the red. Now I'll go ahead and put that onto a document type. So if we grab our trusty old generic page here, add yet another, let's see, let's call this one favorite colors. And we're going to add CBL, checkbox list, hit submit, hit save. It does preview some of these, so that should look very familiar there. And if we pop out to the content on the About Us, there's our blue and red. And just like that, we've added a data type to a doc type and so on and so forth. So if we jump back to here, there's a lot of them that comes in Umbraco out of the box. So you've got the checkbox list, you've got a content picker. The way this one works is essentially it says, hey, I would like to pick a piece of content. You can specify the start node. So rather than just allow all content from anywhere, maybe we say only in the news section. Date picker, this one's pretty useful if you need a date. Date picker with time. Here's one here too. Each one of these options that you get here, Umbraco calls them pre-values. That word's always been kind of strange to me, but they're called pre-values, which I take to just mean a configuration setting. You can have drop-downs. A drop-down that allows multiple selections. Let's see. So some other packages can install their own items here. Here was that grid. So remember how we added we added a grid to a document type, and it's right here, and it was my first grid. So here's where we named all that. And if we want to have different settings on this grid editor, sure enough, we can do so here. Anyway, so there's a bunch of options here. We're not going to get into the details of how to render, how to put these together. Those are tutorials all of their own. Next, we have image cropper, and if you remember from the other day, we had some crops. So well, you may not have remembered, so watch the media section video if you haven't watched it. But if you go here, see how we have square and banner, 100 pixels by 100 pixels and 200 by 50 on images. The reason that works is because we have in our image cropper 2 crops here. So if we want to add another crop, and let's call this one vertical, and let's go 50 by 200 and save the crop and save the data type. If we return to our media item here, let's go with Voltron this time, we added vertical there, and that's, remember again, where the hockey puck helps us. So when we move the hockey puck to the focal point here, now let me zoom in here, now our vertical looks well placed, our banner looks well placed, and our square looks well placed. So that's what that's going to offer us there. Image cropper is a direct replacement for another data type called upload, and it'll be down on the list here because they're alphabetized. Label, I think this one's just if you just want to have a string somewhere, so I haven't used that one too much. List view, so you may or may not remember, depends on if you've seen the section about where we added these here. So here's your list view, and that can be configured right here with your media and your members. So you can have some default ones and you can edit those. So that's just to connect the dots for you. There you go. Next here we have media picker. And this media picker here is just like content picker, except it's for media. Member picker, same as media and content, but for members. MNTP foo. Okay, that sounds awesome. What that is actually a multi-node tree picker, and this one's super useful. In fact, it's so useful, I do feel compelled to show you here. So if we add this one to our document type, let's call this my list, and we're going to use multi-node tree picker foo. Submit, save, and if we jump back out here to our trusty old About Us page, we've got my list, and essentially what it allows you to do is pick bunch of things all at once, and it goes on the list. Now you may want to restrict these to only allow certain things, but there you go. Very useful. So if we jump back to developer here and we're cruising along here, we have multiple media picker. This is just like media picker, except it gives you some options here to do multiples. Then we have nested content, infamous nested content. So this is a really awesome one. It works similar to Archetype if you've ever heard or used that one, but this is now built into the core in Umbraco 7.7. It allows us to pick a document type and have a list of these document types. So we have a document type named foo, a document type named settings, and we can pick one of those. So there's some settings here, and this sounds totally confusing unless you see it. So let's go back to our trusty generic page here, and we're going to add my nested content, and again, we'll do our search here, save, we'll pop back over here to About Us. And here's my nested content. So let's click some buttons. Okay, now we can do a foo or a site settings. Now, if you aren't familiar with the document type, you're going to want to watch the video on the settings. But if you have, you'll be pleased to know that now you can just import one of these document types right into a list. You can sort the list. You can edit them right there. You can do all kinds of cool stuff, and then you can render them to your template. Editors really like the ability to have, at runtime, the option to pick one or more different kinds of field sets, also known as blueprints, doc types, a bunch of different words for that. All right, nested content is cool. Just remember that. All right, next we got numeric. So this one kind of constrains it to an integer. Might work with floats. You'll have to check it out. Oh, looks like it is just integers. So for floats, I guess you're out of luck. Radio box, it's going to be like a drop down or something. Related links, this one's kind of interesting. This one will manifest as a list of content. So related links as in, hey, this article relates to that article and so on and so forth. As far as I know, you cannot relate media with that one, but it's still a cool data type. Rich text editor, we're going to use and abuse this one a lot in a CMS. One thing I would recommend you do, though, is create a new rich text editor as soon as you get this. Let's call it RTE, and I'm going to call it basic. And let's select RTE, or rich text editor, off the list here. And I would take away a bunch of options. I would just leave bold, italic, get rid of all this stuff here, because there's some inputs that really all we want the user to be able to do is to put bold, italic, regular, or linked text. And there you go. And then you would apply this to a doc type. So why not do it again? So let's go to generic page. And oops, I need to add a property. We're going to, let's go with basic on this one. And let's call this basic here too. And then let's contrast that against a regular old rich text editor. RTE. Bam. Submit, save. Now, if we look at that, we got the About Us, and that's what a basic one looks like. All I can basically do is bold and italic. Looks like I didn't add links, but you can, or I can view the source. And then out of the box, a rich text editor allows you to do these sorts of things. Now, remember macros earlier? There's a little button here that says Insert Macros, and I'm just going to click some stuff here until it works. And then that's what inserting a macro into an RTE does for you. However, in my humble opinion, it makes for a really confusing editor experience. Like it's, you know, what is this dotted line thing? Back in the day, it was cool. Not so much anymore. It does give us that real-time kind of preview of what it looks like, but there's a lot more modern ways to do this with, say, nested content and whatnot. So just something to consider when you're building stuff. So if we jump back over here to developer, we're racing down this list here. If you create your own plugin, like I have a tutorial on creating the super awesome plugin, you can create your own. So obviously this one doesn't ship with Umbraco. It didn't come with a package, so I created this just locally. It's only going to exist here. So I do have a tutorial on that. You can check my channel for that. Tags are pretty cool. and tags are where you basically have, you know, those little groupings of things. So that made no sense. So let's go ahead and add tags to the generic page. And generic page is going to fall over here soon because it's got all these things, all these random inputs on it. But whatever. So, okay, submit, save, bada bing, bada boom. And let's scroll to the bottom here, and we can do things like Umbraco and foo and bar and hi there. So those were what tags. Sorry I couldn't really describe them without showing them to you, but I'm pretty sure you understand what tags are. Textarea, pretty simple. This is just a unbounded or a multi-line text area, single line text box, a Boolean value, basically a true or false. And this renders as a checkbox. This form picker here, came in when I installed Umbraco Forms. So a package that you install could install one of these for you. And we have upload. Upload is the default on older versions of Umbraco, and this used to be, if we go all the way to an image, if we remove this file and we hit upload here, that's where it used to be. And now a hot replacement of that is to use something like the image cropper, or you should use the image cropper. So let's go back here to the developer section. All right, to recap, as a developer, you're going to come here and you'll figure out quickly the only thing you really care about will be data types for sure, and grid editors if you're using the grid. Secondly would be the examine dashboard. This is very useful only if you're using examine search. Models builder is useful if and only if you're using the strongly typed models. And the health checks are kind of a new feature, and I think these will probably be useful as well for you. So that's it. That's the developer section, and I hope you learned something today, and thanks for watching.